I might start with you, Carolyn. Perhaps you could just outline for me, first of all, what are IFC's current investments in PNG, and what are you looking for as far as typical investments? What is your criteria? Is it about what sector the company's in, or the state of that company?
Thanks, Andrew. So our current investments are across sectors. In Papua New Guinea, we've been quite lucky to be able to work in mining, oil and gas, in banking. We are proud owners of 10% of Bank South Pacific, which we've held for just over 4 years. We're also responsible for lending Digicel quite a lot of money to come to the Pacific. They're a global partner to IFC, where we started a long relationship in the Caribbean. We also have smaller investments in local companies such as KK Kingston. We have investments in the Kula Fund, which is a small Pacific fund with some investments in Papua New Guinea. And there are a number of others that are very local. In fact, we're concluding a number of investments, one of them with a local landowner company. So we're not sector biased. We don't do illegal activities, but basically everything else is up for grabs. What we're really looking for is companies where we can add value. We're very fortunate in Papua New Guinea to have a very robust, well-regulated, almost fail-safe banking system. In many of the countries that IFC works with around the world, this is not the case. So in PNG, we enjoy having ANZ, Westpac and BSP really going about their business in a very hungry fashion. That leaves for IFC, because we don't compete with local banks. It really leaves us to be involved in catalytic investments. So everything that we look at it as if we're taking ownership, even if it is some kind of debt instrument. We do want good returns. We are aggressive in terms of our return profile. We generally don't do anything less than, in terms of equity, less than an IRR of, say, 15% would be the absolute minimum, and most of what we're looking for is upwards of 20. On the debt side, of course, it's a bit different. We compete where need be with the local pricing, so we don't undercut local pricing when there's no free money with IFC. But importantly, we're also looking for the development outcomes. So we want it all, basically. That's why they've got a woman doing this job here, I think. We want it all. But we want job creation, particularly creation of jobs, good jobs for people. We want, for instance, John Geith and Jones is here from National Catering Service. We want companies that when our name and their name are together, something magical happens, and we create more good than working by ourselves. And we help those companies enter into new markets around the region. IFC's in 180 countries, so part of our job is the convening power. So we want to be able to give something to those companies other than money. We want to be able to give corporate governance help, or environmental and social. We want to be able to add value in the truest sense. In addition to that, we want them to give us something in return, which is job creation, good governance practices, pay their taxes. We really are interested in growing the Papua New Guinean economy and in our case, the Pacific.
Well, what particular sectors do you think, for example, a developed market like Australia can help PNG develop and grow?
Well, I was interested in hearing the Prime Minister's talk earlier, because most of the areas that he identified for Papua New Guinea are the areas that we are encouraging our companies in Australia to focus on. And this is primarily because Australia has the capabilities in these areas through a long experience and exposure to these sort of opportunities. So I'm talking resources, mining, the whole gamut of infrastructure, power, water, roads, telecommunications, even right through into health. Australia has extraordinary capabilities in many areas, and in many cases this is what PNG is looking for. Also education. Australia is a very, very capable provider of education, skills training, and one of the important things for PNG is to develop its education skills broadly, rather than just to focus on, say, the resources or the mining sector, so that its economy can develop a more broader base rather than a reliance on one sector.
Michael, I might turn to you. Michael Block is the Chief Investment Officer for the country's largest superannuation fund, Nambawan Super. I guess by its very nature, the super fund is possibly more conservative. Perhaps you could just outline for us what Nambawan Super's current local investments are.
Yes, we do have more conservative aims than Carolyn has. The published aims of the fund are to try and make CPI plus 2% on a rolling basis. So if we think CPI in PNG will average 6-ish, we want to try and make 8 to 9% after tax going forward. Firstly, thank you very much, Carolyn. Let me tell everyone that we have 20% of SP breweries, which is by far the best investment PNG's ever had. And we're very pleased to have that. The sorts of things that we invest in are most businesses that you can imagine. We have 35% of Brian Bell, just over 10% of BSP, 20% of city pharmacies, about 40% in government bonds, and many other businesses as well. Generally around 20% of most of the larger listed businesses. Probably the thing that's making my life most difficult in looking at opportunities right now is there is no shortage of opportunities. There's a very long line of people coming with all sorts of wonderful, innovative projects. And even I hear this morning that, from the Prime Minister, that there's a tourism-related opportunity that might be knocking on my door very shortly. Is that right, Simon? Basically, the hardest thing for us at the moment is the interest rate structure in PNG. With 10-year bonds in PNG earning something around 12-13%, going up to 16% for 17-year bonds, it makes it very, very hard for other investments to compete. And this is a major hurdle for a lot of other investments. So when Carolyn says that, she may want 15% on a piece of equity, I might say to her, well, I can get 16.4% government guaranteed from the independent state of Papua New Guinea that's never ever defaulted on a loan. That looks pretty good to me. So hopefully, fingers crossed, if the government can bring interest rates down, and I'm doing everything I can to help that by supporting their bond issuance program, then that'll make other investments more attractive in a relative sense. To answer your question more directly though, Andrew, the sorts of projects that we're looking at, if I was to list the 5 dot points of areas that are most attractive to us and the ones where we think will make a return, are first and foremost energy. And as an example, we're looking at solar farms right now. Secondly is agriculture, particularly sustainable and renewable and safe forms of agriculture. Telecommunications and finance, because as you'd all know, PNG is still a very untapped market in terms of the market penetration of telephones and banking services. Tourism and education. They're all the areas that we think will be areas that will have a divergent and special return that is different from just the market. Consumer-led stocks and banks and things like that will generally just go up and down with the market. And so you make an all right return, but possibly not the sort of extra returns by picking market sectors that one thinks will do better than others.